these issues are really complicated. There are no clear answers to these things yet, but we're driving towards them. And the only way we get to answers is by understanding the questions and understanding the technology and understanding the issues that we're all dealing with as creators, as creatives, and as champions of creators. So to that point, I'm really excited for our next panel, which is how are creators unlocking the potential of AI. And I'm thrilled to welcome our moderator, Emily White. So Emily is the founder of the incredibly impactful digital concert I Voted, as well as a founding partner at Collective Entertainment, a talent management and digital marketing consultancy in New York City. She's been at the forefront of technology throughout her career, authoring an Amazon #1 best-selling book entitled How to Build a Sustainable Music Career and Collect All Revenue Streams. And that's pretty relevant for our discussion today. And she also hosts the #1 music business podcast globally of the same name. Welcome, Emily. Come on up. Keep on trying till I reach my highest
ground. Nice. Great. Well, let's get rolling because I know we have limited time. Welcome to How Creators Are Unlocking the Potential of Artificial Intelligence. Of course, you all know that is AI. I'm your moderator, Emily White, as Nick mentioned. While AI has been part of music creation for years, the recent proliferation of AI tools has raised both exciting new possibilities and difficult questions for creators, which we all know. In this panel featuring innovators at the intersection of music and AI, you'll learn how songwriters and composers are incorporating AI tools to amplify creativity, enhance business processes, and grow their careers. This conversation is for anyone curious or concerned about how to thrive alongside AI. So here we go. I'm going to let our esteemed panelists introduce and share a little bit about themselves for their perspective. So let's actually start with Derrick.
All right. My name is Derrick Skye. I'm a composer and performer. I write a lot of music for concert music for orchestras, chamber ensembles, stuff like that. Classical, contemporary classical.
Awesome. And Maya?
I'm a generative AI researcher and professor since about 2014. Also CEO, co-founder of musical AI startup WaveAI, and a musician, songwriter, and singer.
Great. And last but not least, of course, Doug.
Hi, I'm Doug Geers. I am a composer who has been using generative processes in my music since the 1990s and have seen this world really evolve in an insanely fast manner over the past decade or so. I'm also an educator at Brooklyn College, one of the CUNY schools here in town.
Wonderful. So let's do this. The first question is for anyone on the panel. What does AI mean to you?
So for me, AI just means more opportunity. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, should we keep it short or?
Yeah, I got a lot to ask you.
Okay, yeah, there you go.
Anyone else? Is it Terminator? Is it awesome?
I've been literally researching it my entire adult life. AI is a lot of things. I think the best way to think about it is as another form of intelligence that is loosely based on our intelligence because it fundamentally simulates our brain, but a little different. So sort of like an alien intelligence that's better than us in some ways and not quite as good as us in other ways.
I would say I kind of think of it as my musical minions in a way, that I can have these little bots that I say do something and they try and I can kind of evaluate and see what they came up with.
Well, that's a great point, Doug, because we often live and work with AI without even realizing it, whether it's mastering software or a grammar check while typing. Do any of you recall how you first came across AI, or has this evolution just been a seamless experience for you?
I remember getting very frustrated that nobody cared about generative AI. For like 8 years of me working on it, you couldn't get investors to care about it. You couldn't get, it was so hard to get any money for this or to get anybody to see the opportunity here. Yeah.
Things have changed, that's for sure.
Overnight.
Yeah. Anyone, do you remember that specific moment? Or like I said, is it just like spell check or mastering software and you've always used it? Or algorithms?
Yeah, for me, it was ChatGPT.
Yeah.
That was a huge breakthrough for me, mainly because as an artist, you have to be your own business, your own entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And someone before was talking about looking over contracts, like continuously looking over contracts, reading contracts. I started using that thing to help me summarize some of my long-ass contracts so I could figure out what the fuck's going on. And then I remember the first few times I went back and I actually read the summarization and read the contract, and it was pretty helpful. It turned out to be really helpful. And that kind of teed me off because I think that there's a lot of fear of, the people on the top eliminating the people on the bottom using AI. But I've always been looking at it as the reverse, where the people on the bottom eliminate the people at the top. Because it's like, well, what are you guys doing up there? Looking at contracts and raising money? Well, why don't I just do that and get out of there, so.
Doug, were you rocking AI in the 90s?
You know what? I remember the first time I was introduced to this algorithmic music software, which I still use, called Max or Max MSP. Yeah. And back in the day, there were these things called manuals. And there were these big paper books. I don't know if you guys remember that. But it had like pages and pages and pages of instructions. But you could build a little musical system that you could algorithmically create MIDI and song structures or rhythms and things like that. And at the time, for me, it was really fun. It was like audio Lego, and I like to build stuff, so I thought it was great.
Very cool. So Derrick, you're a world-class composer and performer. How are you utilizing AI in your work and incorporating it into your creative process?
Yeah, so for me, a lot of it is text-oriented. So I did an opera that we'll probably talk about later. And the main producer of the opera was the librettist. His name is Kenrick McDowell. And he used generative AI to create the text. And when I was using generative AI to figure out how to arrange the text with the music that I wanted to write, and also was looking for ways of using AI to generate the music, it failed. And that was mainly because the core of music and AI at the moment, the foundation is Western-based. Western classical is music theory at its root. And I'm a transcultural composer, so it's not equitable at the moment for me to be able to experiment with different rags or different daska or different modes from the makam, these other musical styles. And so we ended up just kind of sticking with the generative text in order to complete the collaboration. And then there was also artificial intelligence with the imagery that was going on. And then there was artificial intelligence extrapolating biosphere data from human beings and kind of taking that information and making art out of it, which I thought was super fascinating. And I think it would be super cool if you were playing an instrument and then your body was playing another instrument and both of those things were happening simultaneously. That'd be fucking sick.
We should talk.
Yeah.
Well, you alluded to this, but tell us about your collaborative electroacoustic artificial intelligence opera commissioned by the Lincoln Center, which was also recently featured at TED 2023.
Yeah, so I will, thanks. So I'll expand on that. I was using modular synths and messing around with MIDI and control voltage, CB and stuff like that. And then it was electroacoustic, so we also had live musicians, flute, viola, some percussion. Because it's always about being collaborative. Okay, so what? The new machine comes out. Well, let's figure out how to bring that in. synthesizer or whatever. We, like I was saying before, when I was looking for ways to incorporate AI with actually writing the music, there was this equitability issue with the way that the thing was built. And so that didn't quite work. But then what I was able to do was use generative techniques, in which I took, there were a couple of modules that you can buy and hook up, get heartbeat data, you can get muscle data and brainwave data, and you can kind of run that through the machine to kind of say, well, when this kind of response happens, it's going to affect this sound, this kind of a thing going on. And so it's a little bit of a step back from AI purely like in the function of the music. But what I did find interesting is that just gave me even more of a strong appetite to participate in making sure that there's an AI that's developed in a more equitable way musically. There's a lot of fear, I think, that we've experienced when people are talking about AI. But a lot of times when I think about AI, it almost sounds like a Noah's Ark for me, because I have teachers who are very old. There's one of my teachers, his name is Kopla Latepko, and he is from West Africa. He's from Ghana, and he's very old. And there are many pieces that he's taught me. And I don't always have the time because of my function in our society to pass that information on, and I do the best I can, but it just got me thinking, oh my goodness, when he's gone, like if none of the younger people are learning these music, there's actually a such thing as thousands of years of music that just dies with the people that were making it. And so if there was some way to make sure that the portion of AI that can be very educative could take a snapshot of everything that we have right now, so that everybody could be able to participate, because it's a health issue. The reason why we've been hearing a lot about people, wow, it's moving so fast. Yeah, it's moving so fast because people like me want to participate. Like we want to participate 100% because it's part of our health. Like human beings need music and they need to make art to live. And so when AI is being made, like people are rushing to it because there's a lot of shit going on in the world right now, and they need to make stuff that resonates with them to be healthy. And they're going to do whatever it takes. They're going to do whatever it takes to participate.
100%.
So that's part of the opera, too.
Love it. So Maya, you've been at the forefront of AI for almost a decade. You've also been an early advocate for human-centered generative AI, bringing awareness on the power of AI to profoundly elevate human creativity. So what is human-centered generative AI?
Yeah. When people think about AI, and I'm talking everybody, academics, business people, investors, people who use the tech, creatives, initially we think about the AI as an independent entity, as something that's autonomous, that does everything by itself. For some reason, that's where the human imagination goes first, regardless of where you see that development. And then people start to pause and say, oh, well, does it actually help anybody? And then you have human in the loop. It's so nice and cute, you can go to ChatGPT and type stuff. But we shouldn't be in the loop. We are the heart, We are the ones with stories to tell. We are the ones with emotions to share. In what universe should we be in some sort of loop? The way that I like to look at the role of generative AI, particularly in music, but in any creative endeavor, is taking the role of what I call the humble creative machine, meaning that it has its brilliance, it has its strength, but the way that it needs to be positioned is in the background, supporting the artist, supporting the star, in the way that the human being wants to be supported, in a way that genuinely, profoundly elevates the creativity of that human being. And that involves the human being in full control and really only using these systems in a way that really enriches the creative process and doesn't just sort of, you can sort of almost pretend to be supporting somebody. Imagine you're working with another person and you say, oh, I want to write a song about raindrops falling in a puddle of rain. That really inspired me. And they're like, oh, okay, here you go. Here's a song. Well, they didn't help you. They didn't help you be creative, right? So, and I feel like some of the tools we have today kind of fall into this category. They're click of a button solutions that might be advertised as helping you be creative. But that doesn't take away from the fact that there really are ways to use AI in a way that profoundly elevates human creativity. I'll pause here because I can say a lot more about this and how this works.
Well, you also have over 50 peer-reviewed research publications, and your research has been cited in over 1,200 publications. So this is a very broad question, but what insights and takeaways are you finding in your research when it comes to AI and music?
Yeah, this number that you cited just inspired me. You're saying my research has been cited 1,200 times.
That's what they tell me.
But there are 15,000 users on my platforms every day. So I learn a lot more from our users than anybody else. Researchers can come in and business people can come in and try to claim what people want, but you go out there, you build a tool for people, and they will tell you with their time and money what helps them and what doesn't. So with Lyric Studio and Melody Studio, which we got out there, we've learned how much people care about the user interface, the kind of degrees of freedom that people want, what people find inspiring and what they find stifling as far as the creative process. We've had #1 hits made with our tools. We've had songs with millions of streams made with our tools. And it is really learning from the stories of the people who use our products that I've learned really more than from anything else. Because I can invent what people need all day long, but it's same as we should be engaging with AI to see what it's all about. People who build AI systems need to engage with musicians to figure out, what really needs to be built.
And how do they feel? You mentioned sometimes they can feel creatively stifled. What are those pain points you're seeing?
It's really interesting. It's very, very easy to stifle people. It's the design of the interface needs to be so careful. So in some of our earliest systems, we thought we were being helpful, to people who are new to songwriting. We're like, okay, here's like a template with background music, and you can fill in your own lyrics and your own melodies. And people were like, well, maybe I want my own background music, and maybe I don't tell me how many lines should be in my chorus, which in retrospect is so obvious, of course. So it's very important. Don't help too much, Don't help to the point where you're stifling. And you see that so much. These text-to-image models, which I love, they are so cool. They are so cool. But they're also kind of stifling because they never understand exactly what I want. And why on earth do they get final say on the image instead of me? So it's kind of uncomfortable. So we really err on the side of flexibility and freedom for our users. So it's better to help a little bit less, but not hinder. This was a really important lesson that I hope will sort of percolate to the rest of the industry.
Absolutely. So Doug, as an educator, how are you approaching AI in the classroom, and what do your students think about all this?
Students are both excited and scared, which I think we all kind of feel. And I try to open the door by finding the fun. I feel like people feel intimidated, but if you can show them, hey, here's a relatively simple gizmo that you can start playing with, and with a few simple knobs or virtual knobs, parameters that you can sort of start tweaking and playing with to see what you can create with this and feel like that you have some control over it. I think that's a big thing for artists, is the idea of having this sort of virtual helpmate sounds cool, but you also don't, it's sort of what Maya was just saying, you don't want it to just run away and take the fun away from you. You really have to find get into it, find your flow with these kind of tools. And I think that's where the intimidation falls away once they see it as play.
Absolutely. So for any of you, What advice would you give the creator who has never used tools like these? How can a composer get started, maybe, whether they're a super experienced composer or a beginner?
Well, I think philosophically, everyone should really, you could, not should, I don't want to tell anybody what to do, but you could approach it personally, wanting to create something that resonates with you specifically, because it's very easy to think about, somebody's going to, they're going to do this, or that, but the reality is everybody's doing this personally. They're engaging with it personally because they're trying to get something that resonates with them, and then maybe share it with somebody.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that kind of like takes the fear and the edge off of it. So that would be philosophical, I guess, suggestion.
Yeah, and I would say that for any art, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I would have said too. I feel like, you have to make it personal. And I always tell, my philosophy with students is make them care. Like if you feel like you have a stake in getting into something like a personal artistic goal, then it's just going to be more interesting. And I think that, to me, there are a couple of sides of this that there is the whole business side. Are the robots going to become our overlords, and write all of our songs? And there is I am an artist already. I want to explore what tools are there out there now that weren't there 10 years ago that I might be able to get my fingers into and do something cool. So in that second area, I think this is exactly what I would advise people to do. Find one tool, play with it.
I'd like to echo Derrick and Douglas, because I think that's exactly what it's about. It's about you expressing yourself and seeing how this can help you. So often we see, LinkedIn is full of funny examples of how to trip ChatGPT. And ChatGPT has a lot of failings, and that's okay. But if you come in with this sort of intention to show that the AI is silly, that it's never gonna amount to anything, you'll probably succeed in this goal, if that's kind of the mindset that 100%. A person comes in with. If on the other hand you come in with the intention to create meaningfully, like my co-panelist here suggested, it's really pretty amazing how quickly you can get deep into it. We've had people, using Lyric Studio who finish songs that have been sitting in their cupboard for years. And I think my favorite use case was when somebody said that, and I'm not saying it's always the case, but it does happen that it feels that the AI, this is a real quote from a real person, she felt that the AI understood her better than other people. Wow. In the kind of, I know it's okay that it's funny, and it's okay that it sounds ridiculous, because you really sort of have to experience it to believe it. How well a system that's designed to go with your style and go with your emotion, how well it can sort of prompt you to go deeper into yourself. It is almost the opposite of how we're taught to understand AI as something that's so focused on efficiency and imitation and sort of just comes in and has no creative ability, and it's, what is it even doing here? But when you build the system with the intent of exploring creative possibilities and building off the style of a human being, there's a lot more out there than what's popular right now. Yeah. And a lot more that's possible that's yet to be created.
Absolutely. So what have you learned about, any of you, what have you learned about how to use AI, and was there a lot of trial and error? Is there still a lot of trial and error as this technology is evolving?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of trial and error. I tried to do some image generative stuff, but then, as anybody in here who's a creator knows,
And sorry, I know this was mentioned, but do you want to define image generative?
Oh yeah. So there's different AI companies, models where you can give a description of something that you want to see art-wise, and then it will create the image, hopefully to what you're wanting to see, and that's kind of the basic gist of it. But I will say that if, for people like yourselves and myself, if you're a creator, you tend to want very specific things at a certain point. And for me, like that, it's not it's not quite there yet. But still, the possibility is just profound that something like that could be accessible. I know that at least when I was younger, I couldn't afford I didn't even know you could pay somebody to paint a picture of you, and how profound that might have an effect on you to see yourself in a portrait that wasn't just a picture, but it looked like something took time to create your image. But to see that happen, some of my family members have cried because who would have done that for them? Would they have had the money to pay for these things?
Well, we'll save that for the graphic design guild. So, and does anyone else want to comment on that?
Well, I mean, I feel like we just barely started, really. Just barely. In terms of what's commercially available, there's like this universe of what can be built, and then there's like one little drop that has been built, barely. In music, like we really have barely done anything as far as, music is so rich and so wide and so complicated. Yeah, the tools are gonna come, and as they roll out, check them out, I guess.
Yeah, I feel like the super nerdy experimental corner of the composer world has been playing with these things for a long time, and I've witnessed a lot of those things. But a lot of those tools are really for people who are programmers and composers, and we're just now getting to the point where you can just go and play. So one thing I would say is, for anybody in this audience, if you have not played with Blob Opera, you should go tonight and play with Blob Opera. It is fun.
Write that down.
Write it down, Blob Opera. Just Google it, you'll find it. So there are other tools that are maybe more sophisticated, like maybe some of your software.
Yeah, there's Ava, but like so much. Ava is a really good tool. I really enjoy Blob Opera. It's like a fun Google toy. Google has a few more toys. I mean, there's Derrick Studio and Melody Studio, which are more more serious tools that we build. There's a whole slew of click of a button music creation tools which are similar to Ava. What I like about Ava, I don't know why I'm advertising their product for them, is that you can at least download the stems, which I call sort of like top down. They create everything for you, but at least you can break it apart. What I want to see more of is like my tools, which are more bottom up. They're not creating everything that you then need to break apart. But like this seriously, as far as investment dollars, as far as like really people taking this seriously on the business side, this woke up yesterday. And and user interface matters. People won't use a product if the user interface is a little bit off. I tell you from experience. So.
Yeah.
The thing about the stems is really great, because I feel like what I find fun is to have the generative system make something, and then I can take it apart and tweak it and move around things, and it's like collaging, and mixing is an art form. And so that, even if you have stems, you can like say, I don't like these four measures, they're gone. I'm going to put this part on top of that part. It's really cool.
Absolutely. So are there any tools that any of you want or need that don't exist yet?
Oh, yeah. Definitely.
Like what? I'll make it for you.
Well,
No pressure.
The process of engraving. Like, how big of a barrier is that for people that don't know how to write music, engraving music? So making notation of music. That's a huge barrier to entry for a lot of people that want to participate in ASCAP, but think that if they can't actually write down what the chord is or what the note is and understand the staff, that's not for them.
Melody Studio. This was not a plug.
But I will say, but for me as a classical composer, man, it would just save my life if I didn't have to sit so long to do engraving in the style that I want to do it in, right? And then there's also the equitability issue across the pantheon of music. Right now it's Western bass, A440. Yeah. The rest of the world didn't agree to that. Right. They just play and they're like, this is what sounds good to me. Let's do it. And then they just start playing. But then if they want to use a synthesizer, if they want to use any kind of engineered contraption that comes from the Western world, well, they're going to conform. And if they want to do it their way, they got to program the hell out of it to figure out how to adjust it to make it okay for them. And there's like billions of people out there that would love to participate in our community. So that's what I want. I want 100%. Everybody gets to be involved.
Totally. But to your first point, and this is actually not AI, I believe Hal Leonard's Arrange Me can do that for you. And I believe it's real humans notate. So it's like you can do the AI version, you can do the human version. Anyone else? Any other tools that you want or need?
I would love to have a tool that would add another day of the week. I don't know if that's possible, but that would be so awesome. I just
That'd
need,
be cool.
Saturday day or something so I can like chill out, have a whole day to do my music, and then come back to reality. But I don't think that's coming anytime soon, alas. But I think tools that would help people at the early stages of their career explore and make things happen. And it's amazing what's out there now. Even if you just have GarageBand, you can produce some, or other apps on phones, you can produce some pretty amazing music. But if AI could be incorporated into tools like that and enable people at an earlier stage of their work to touch it and see possibilities and not be intimidated by it, but actually integrate it, I think that would be great.
Yeah, these are great points. I think another kind of good way of thinking about it is think about, what you typically need from people who might not be available at 3 a.m. when inspiration hits. And perhaps this is something that could maybe be filled in by AI. One direction there's a whole bunch of stuff that we plan to build, but one direction that we probably will never go into is improvisation. There was this amazing research tool called Improv-Visor, which was like a research tool, and you could literally improvise with it. It plays the piano, it kind of like riffs with you, and at that point when I played with it, I haven't played the piano in a long time, and I had trouble improvising, and I could improvise with it. And then since then, I've sort of picked up the skill on my own. There's a lot of room to commercialize something like this. And the problem is that unless somebody commercializes it, like it doesn't matter that it's available for free. You can Google Improv-Visor, it's free for everybody. But the user interface is virtually unusable, like if you're not a super technical person, if you don't have a ton of time. So I really, really hope that people will build these, like musicians you can jam with. It's so cool.
Yeah, I think two things regarding that. One is, maybe there's a composer named George Lewis, who is a fabulous composer, who like around 1988 or so built a system that he could improvise with. He was a jazz trombone player. It was called Voyager. And so there's a long history of systems like that, but they're usually like that. They're idiosyncratic to a person who created this custom things for themselves. To universalize it would be really, really cool.
Yeah. Are any of you, I know there was a long panel on this topic before us, but are any of you running into any problems with respect to navigating copyright, or are you not navigating it at the moment and leading with your creations first?
Shit. Copyright it's a really tough discussion, right? Like I'm not a lawyer, but 100% honesty, everybody's borrowing from everybody for all time. Yeah. Like that's how we move forward as a community, and the dividing lines on like how someone can claim ownership over something is a very difficult thing for me to understand. I mean, I copyright my work, but if somebody used a chunk of it, I'm not quite sure I would just go and sue them. And I understand that I understand the financial implications of wanting to be able to sustain yourself financially and get paid. But this is also something that we discussed earlier, that our current economic system is not going to work with artificial intelligence. It's going to have to change, and it's probably going to be guaranteed income. I know a lot of people seem like, what the hell? I'm worth more than but we're going to keep banging our head against the wall over and over and over again. I should get paid. And then it's just going to keep personal view, that it's just going to keep heading in that direction, because going back to just the human health issue, like you cannot stop people wanting to nurture themselves with art.
Okay, I have to build on this because I think it's such an amazing point. The world our economic system and social system is really not prepared for generative AI. If you look at what ChatGPT is, which is trained on 10% of the internet, It essentially represents a collective consciousness and a collective unconscious full of biases. What can you do? And so we got some musical entertainment. And so as a result, like, we're not used to this idea of tapping into something that was created collectively. You know, it's, well, then who makes money on it? What's the point? But the possibilities with something like this are just so wide and so profound for humanity to move forward. And yet we sort of get tripped on the fact that we don't know how to deal with this. On the other side, kind of the more pragmatic side, I'm absolutely appalled by a lot of what's going on in my industry. I've opened my company back in 2017, back when you couldn't get people to care about generative AI as a concept, and yet, you know, some of the largest players in the space are coming in hot, encouraging people to imitate each other's styles. Really, really weird stuff, honestly. Why on earth would you want to be like, I want to make a photograph in the style of this photographer, or I want to write this article in the style of this journalist? And they were like encouraging this use case. These were the examples in like when these tools were promoted. I mean, it's great marketing. I just honestly don't understand why they decided to sort of equate our industry with this kind of blatantly just awful use case. So I hope that, you know, I can at least express this perspective that this is not inherent to the AI. You can, when we think about this all the time in WaveAI, there is so much you can do to protect creators. You can do so much to make sure that your system never imitates anybody, that you can make it impossible to use your system to imitate anybody. There are so many different ways to do this, and the people at the big companies are more than smart enough to think about it. So this is not a technology problem, it's a business decision problem. All right, so I really, really hope to see industry and sort of government move towards, like, just because you can doesn't mean you should. Just because, you know, there's so much stuff that human beings can do that we're not allowed. There is so much of it that we're not allowed to do in order to keep a functioning society. And AI systems I should not be allowed to use a system that lets me imitate, I don't know, Taylor Swift without Taylor Swift's participation. Same as a person cannot, you know, go around impersonating her and publishing songs claiming to be written by her. Like, there are laws that apply to humans that also have space to apply to AI systems. And hopefully we're going to get there, and I think we are actually from the conversations I've been having, to protect against at least the most blatant form of imitations that AI can enable.
Well, that's a great point, because comedian Sarah Silverman's book publisher is suing OpenAI for ingesting her work. So how does consent come into play with AI? Doug?
Yeah, you know, we're living in this Wild West situation, and that's why I don't really know how to answer. This is what should happen versus what do I think is already happening. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like maybe someone on the previous panel said something to this effect, that there should be a way to kind of like watermark these things so that if the AI ingests your complete catalog, that there's some note in there that part of that output eventually is because it ingested your work. And in my dream society, assuming that it's, actually my dream society would be the universal income thing, I think, because wouldn't it be great?
It's gonna ingest everyone.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
That's what's gonna happen.
It would be great if we lived in a world where we didn't have to feel this threat of the automated systems doing a bunch of work for us, but would feel that that was a great thing and we didn't have to worry about paying the rent. So that would be the ideal. But I think that it would be great if there was some way that you could say no, and the system would know, like, this has to be not ingested, or if it has been, it has to be actually deleted. And then if it is ingested, that there be some way that, you know, there's sort of, I don't know if blockchain is any way connect as an analogy, but that there be some record that this had been there, and that, you know, just as Spotify gives you like 1/10,000th of a penny for a play or whatever it is, that you would get some compensation eventually if what had been ingested of your work was used by somebody else.
Absolutely. So I've got 3 questions I want to try to squeeze in the next 6 minutes. So We're currently at the Directors Guild of America, which has banned AI from directing in a time when both screenwriters and, of course, actors are on strike. So what does our industry gain to learn from parallel creative fields?
Well, AI and technology in my career has always been a way of disruption. Someone mentioned the word disrupting. And so that, for me, disruption is total. So if the people at the top don't want to play ball, then you use the AI to take their job, and then you go and there's a lot of times where I've written something and, a film person didn't quite do what I felt like would have been most appropriate for my staff. So what if I start collaborating with filmmakers and we use AI because we don't have a lot of money, but we know we need to create and we know how to do right by our art.
Yeah.
And we just cut them out at the top. And then because there's mechanisms now where you can take your material and just give it directly to people, which is why influencers exist. And so you just cut them out. If they don't want to hang out and play ball, then.
Well, that's a really good point, and it was mentioned on the previous panel. It's kind of like the early days of, clap for that, absolutely. It's kind of like the internet days of Internet 2.0, right? Democratizing the tools of recording and distribution. But to that point, Derrick, in your work as a composer, you've been dedicated to promoting cross-cultural understanding through music. So this is a fairly general question for such broad concepts, but does AI foster or hinder dialogue across cultures?
Well, it can do both. I think what Doug was talking about in an educative sense, if a computer model, if you asked a computer model to give you some melodic line based on a certain set of parameters, and it brings out the melodic line to you, what I would hope is that it also gives you examples of where that came from.
Yeah.
Because everything comes from somewhere.
Totally.
And so if it cited even to the smallest, I'm not taking, perfect fifth, and then all of a sudden there's like the entire human history.
Yeah.
Perfect fifth. But just give you some kind of examples of like where it comes from. This is part of the cross-cultural understanding, right? If there's Inuit singing, or there's Tibetan throat singing, or and someone says, can you put this in? Yeah, this, and by the way, here's a little bit of history about the people that this comes from, blah, 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 blah. Like, that'd be pretty cool. And so really as an educative tool, I think AI would be a massive powerhouse, not only in teaching people about these particular styles of music and approaches, but also could serve as this Noah's Ark to keep it alive, because music only stays alive when people do it. It has to be done in order for it to live. And so the more that people know about these other cultures and the way that they approach music, the more that they can find ways to engage with these communities and practice these things. That just brings us closer together.
100%. Maya, do you want to jump in on that?
Oh, I just really like this. So we've done, so much of what's happening in AI is sort of centered on English and Western culture. But it doesn't have to be like that. Again, these are just choices. We've made an Italian version of our system a long time ago, and we had this person who doesn't speak Italian and never played an instrument make an Italian aria set in World of Warcraft, which is kind of my first sign that, okay, there's something interesting here. He really got involved in it. It was sort of this amazing art project. And then we made our tools in Japanese as well for a project. So there is nothing that, the AI itself, the methodology behind the AI is not married to any culture or language. And I really hope as this expands, along with the idea of actually supporting human creators, that we start seeing this go to non-Western styles and other languages, become a lot more universal. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I really like the idea that people could input their own work, their own performances, and build their own database from which to play with, like you were saying with improvising earlier, to preserve for future, and also to say, okay, I sang into my AI bot for 3 hours, and now I'm going to tell it to play that back, but with a xylophone sound or something, and then you get some wacko coolness out of it, hopefully. You know.
Well, but wait a minute. Like, that could be amazing, right?
Sure.
Like, you have your voice for a certain amount of time of your life before you succumb to the muscles not being able to function. And if you were able to capture the essence of your voice at the time that you loved it and that it resonated with you the most, and then you get to continue to create for yourself and for others, like, until you're gone, that's amazing. Like, that would be amazing.
Absolutely. So 1 minute for my last question. The Grammys recently updated their guidelines stating only human creators are eligible to be submitted for consideration for, nominated for, or win a Grammy Award. So what are your thoughts on transparency when utilizing AI?
My honest opinion is that sometimes it's very, very hard to tell. When human beings collaborate, if 3 people are collaborating and you ask them what percent they think they contributed, it's going to usually add up to more than 100. That being said, if you use the AI to do it instead of you or with you. So I really, really hope that, like pretty much all tools we have today, that ultimately people are going to be using the tools to express themselves and to make themselves better artists. So I hope as a result of, I hope it will be normalized through this kind of path, just becoming another tool in our toolbox, rather than kind of secretly taking over.
Anyone else, real quick, transparency in
I like the idea that they are limiting it only to people, because seeing a computer on stage giving a speech, I don't know, like they put the laptop and they put the microphone. Yeah, I feel like exactly what Maya was saying, we have to find a way that even if it's like the complexity of the space shuttle, that there's a human at the control of that space shuttle, and hopefully that person's emotional life and experience are going to bring something there that's meaningful, because AI can spit out like 100 million songs, but are they good songs? Does anybody care about that song? Like, where is the human experience in the picture? We want to try to keep that central, that there should be something that touches you and that makes you care, and hopefully there's a person who's doing that.
100%. Final thought, Derrick, before Q&A?
Yeah, in the long run, it just works better to tell the truth. Lying is just too much work, and it takes too long to maintain the lies. So if you just tell the truth, you can just be done with it. And just wear it on your shoulder. Yeah, I did it. It was me.
I'm a member of the Authors Guild, and I did see something on their forum about potentially almost like a fair trade logo, like this was written by humans, this was made by humans. So just throwing that out there. So we have a few minutes for Q&A. We've got folks going around with mics. They're up in the mezzanine as well. Before you step up to the mic, please think of a brief question dedicated or directed at our panelists that will benefit everyone in the room, as our Q&As are meant to help all in attendance. So if you see someone with a mic, thanks, Laura.
Hey, thank you. Thank you for this panel. Thank you, ASCAP. Really, it's really incredible. Personally, I've been seeing how AI has been benefiting me personally from using resources like Muso.ai and other resources that are able to use machine data to help, see the stream data from all the different platforms. I'm just wondering if, I think it's going to change a lot of things, but I mean, where do you see the, from a financial standpoint, where you see AI can actually help from everybody, from like a royalty accounting to like scaling a business, if you have any possessions on those?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that for the time being, until our economic system can accommodate the full force of AI, I think that AI could definitely be used to be able to track people's music much more efficiently. And within the system that we have, I think even it was mentioned earlier how much more detail the systems have been able to scale up to capture all of the data that's necessary to get the proper amount of royalties. So in the meantime, it's going to be a huge benefit for that.
I know Hi-Fi has tools for that. Yeah, it's not open to everyone yet, but hopefully soon. Yeah, absolutely. Where are the mics? Yeah.
I just have a question. So earlier in the presentation, before you folks got on the stage, we're talking about trillions of performances and trillions and more performances. And it would seem to me that unless all of a sudden there was some giant influx of money from somewhere, we're talking about creators making less and less money. So if you're an educator or you're someone who's getting wonderful commissions or you have a company and you're selling software, there is compensation available. I'm thinking about the rest of us who are creating music. And for instance, if we're taking buyouts for our work, if we create work that we're only getting paid once, and there's no way to make additional income after that, how do the workaday composers continue to be able to make music as a living, to make it a career and not just make it a hobby they do after their shift as an Uber driver?
I would say that's a huge question. Yeah. And you'll see what my colleagues think about it. But I think there's an article in today's New York Times about a woman who wrote a jazzy track that's now on the hold music for like several major corporations. And she was paid, like a couple $1,000s for this track. And now like Amazon is using it and, I don't know, Con Ed or a bunch of other companies are using it as their hold music. She's getting no other compensation for that. And I'm sure you all know of other instances where composers sold like a jingle or something for a few $100s and it's still being used today. I think Barry Manilow had that happen. So it's a big question. And I think going back to the trillions and trillions, if those are, because like on Spotify, where you get paid almost nothing for performance or someone listening to your work, but if it can be tracked and if you can be paid something, then those trillions are going to add up to something. I don't think it's equitable right now. I think that has to be another battle to be waged to try to get that up to an equitable level. The real problem is for the composer who's doing the work for hire. You get a flat fee, and then someone else basically owns your work. And I don't know a workaround for that situation, but I know that it's pretty common.
Well, I mean, I can say that my career didn't start off like where I am. There's no fucking way that I wasn't just born into this fucking thing. And so I just want to be clear that like the only reason why I'm here is because of the way that technology has progressed. I wasn't afforded classical music lessons when I was a kid. I went to school, public school. They happened to have a program there. I did what I could, but my benefits I didn't really get the benefit of being able to participate in the classical community until I could work with sample libraries. Because I couldn't afford to go to these programs, thousands of dollars. My parents weren't going to pay for shit to do all that. So I had to do a bunch of odd-end jobs. And then you do what you can for your resources, and you capture the mechanisms that will get you to where you need to be, and you push. And so what I would say is look, it's okay. So the corporation just screws you over because they just take the fucking music and then they do whatever they want, and you only got paid $1,000. Well, then, in my mind, I'm like, well, then fuck them. I'll just go create a corporation and sell something and put my music to that thing. So how about that? So like, there's ways where like you don't have to just sit there and take it like all the way around. If there's an entity that is keeping you from sustaining yourself the way that you want to sustain yourself, you should be thinking, well, then maybe we take that. And we go around that way. And that's what I see the benefit of AI being.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other questions?
I guess my question for you is, and there's so much, it's hard to do one question, but like, I don't have any technological phobia, I taught myself to engrave using MuseScore, because I don't have a formal music education. I do digital recording and so forth. But AI is a big new thing for me. So I'm wondering, a person who's getting back into old school singer-songwriter, me and my guitar songwriting, what's my first step into AI that's going to help me without taking something from the richness of that personal experience?
This will be final thoughts too.
I'd love to comment on that one. one of the most amazing things about AI is its ability, if done right, to explore the creative space of possibilities. And that's not necessarily, music that's made on a computer. It's not necessarily, in any way connected to DAWs or sound design. It's very much fits with sitting there and on the guitar or on the piano. Most of the music I make is on the piano. And I much prefer an acoustic over an electronic piano. And when it comes to, kind of our focus so far has been lyrics and melodies, but really this can apply to any sort of musical motif, is that a properly built AI system, you can kind of seed it with some of your own ideas, and it kind of blows up the space of possibilities, places you can go to next, which can at times be very, very inspiring. Sometimes just a couple of lines of lyrics or one melody is enough for me to go to a really, really interesting new place on my instruments with my own voice. I'm trained as a vocalist. That's kind of my main instrument. So actually, composition I find to be, in my opinion, the most interesting application of AI, and one that really keeps the person and their story front and center.
Very cool. Well, I could talk to you about this all day, but we're out of time, so let's give it up for our amazing panelists.